Well, welcome back from lunch. Day one of our World Congress. Today, or this afternoon, we're going to talk about Micah's appeal to walk humbly. In our morning sessions, our speakers discuss the portions of Micah 6:8 that deal with doing right and loving mercy. As chaplains, we're called to be servant leaders. This afternoon, as we study how to walk humbly, Chaplain Edwin Alicea will guide us through the mystery of servant leadership and its three main principles of example, proximity, and empowerment.
And just because you are done with your formal education, that doesn't mean that a chaplain stops learning. That education is over. A chaplain who prioritizes their time to educate themselves in new concepts and ideas with self and others enhance their knowledge and skills as a spiritual care professional. Chaplain Joey Rivera discussed this in the Journey of the Chaplain as a Lifelong Learner.
There are moments when the loudest voice in the room is the one that is the most quiet. Chaplain Omaña addresses this idea in the strong voice of a quiet presence.
The ethic of humility in spiritual care is more about being than doing. It is about humbleness, gentleness, patience, and bearing one another up in the unity of love through the bonds of peace. Dr. Ted Hamilton reviews these ideas in Learn from Me, for I am meek and humble.
Only three things happen naturally in an organization: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else takes leadership. Peter Drucker. The one idea that I want to leave with you in this day is that servant leadership is one who leads through relationships and empowers his people to thrive. 3 points that I want to drive today. Number one, I want to talk about the foundation of servant leadership. I want to talk about the transforming agent of servant leadership. And I want to talk about the insanity of servant leadership. Let's talk about the foundation of servant leadership. Example, integrity. In Numbers chapter 11, there is a story of Moses and how Moses is going for maybe what could be considered a compassion fatigue or maybe a burnout symptoms, because he just told God, you know what? I've had it. This is enough. I just cannot keep carrying these people. I've given them everything I have, and they keep asking for more. Kill me. Just bring someone else, but this is it. And God says, do something. Choose 70 people, bring them over to the tabernacle, and that caring spirit that you have, I'm going to put into them too. So Moses, I don't know if he texted or how he did that day. Maybe he sent a group message and notified everyone. And everyone came, but 2 people. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened with them. They were too timid. Maybe they didn't consider themselves worthy enough, but they didn't show up. And thinking that the 70 are there, the Holy Spirit comes down, and it says that they start prophesying. And when they are prophesying, as the Spirit hits them, it's spilled into the other 2 that were out in the camp that were not with them, and they started prophesying where they were. And now there is a kid that comes running to Moses and said, Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying back there. And now Joshua interrupts Moses and said, my Lord, forbid them. Stop them. Don't let them do it. And now Moses has a very profound answer, which is a question to Joshua. Are you jealous? Thankfully, the question did not finish there. The question is, are you jealous for my sake? I wish that God would let everyone prophesy, and he would put his spirit over everyone in this nation. And here is a mind-blowing experience in which Joshua thinks that they can control people, that this is also only an exclusive group. And Moses says, no, this is an inclusive group. I don't know why they were there, but I will not question my master for giving the Spirit to them. Example, integrity, inclusiveness. These are foundations for servant leadership. Albert Schweitzer on one occasion said, example is leadership, leadership is example. Now let's go into the second point, proximity, the transforming agent of servant leadership. It has been proven that within 2 years of a person being promoted to an administrative position, normally that person will forget the realities of the job that he was doing or she was doing, unless that person is intentional. About 7 months ago, something like that, there was a big activity here in Florida, and all the chaplains were supposed to be there, and we were trying to find help to have substitutes in the hospital so all the chaplains could be there, even me. Unfortunately, we could not find for one shift. And I decided to stay behind and cover the chaplains for that shift so they could enjoy the activity. I was supposed to finish my shift at about 10 o'clock that night. And about 8:30, we hear the message, code blue, and it says the room number. There is a cardiac arrest. And I rush to the floor, and when I enter the unit, there is a massive amount of people gathered in a waiting area, and they are all praying. As I walk into the unit and down the hall, I can see that there is a smaller group of people in front of the room, and they are also praying. As I approach the family to see who is who, I can see that the wife of the patient is being surrounded by friends, and they are praying with her, but I also notice that the kids are a little further down, but they are crying as they are suffering, but not with the rest of the people. Right in that moment, the physician comes out and he says, ma'am, I want you to know that we have put 15 pints of blood in your husband, and things are not looking good. And she stops him right there and she says, I want you to know that you are speaking words of men, but I want to speak the word of God, and he has promised life for him. He has promised healing for him. You do your part, we will do our part, we'll continue praying. No, do everything for my husband. I said, wow. So here we are, and then she says, by the way, the chaplain just got here, and he's going to pray with us too. And I was part of the team that was praying for the healing of this person. It took me a long time to be there with the family, a long time to get the story, to know their story, where they came from, what they had achieved, all the dreams that they had for the future, everything about the family. It took me 2 hours. And about 10:30 at night, that night, she says one more time, Edwin, I want you to pray again with me. And I decided to do something different. I told her, why don't we pray right beside him? The nurse was not very happy because the scene was not pleasant at all. You see, he had a liver condition, and he was bleeding from everywhere in the body. Every single hole was gushing blood. Even his eyes were bleeding. And when we got close to the body, and you could smell the iron in the air, it's not a pleasant smell. And you could see the broken body, that it was just practically a dead body. Now she kind of leaned back and she resisted to get any closer. And instead of praying, she turns around and she says, Edwin, I want my husband alive, but I think I am mistreating him. And right in that moment, the 3 children are right behind me, and they burst out crying. And she said, oh my God, why are you crying? And then they replied, because Mom, we believe the same thing. I think Dad is already dead, and we're pushing him beyond measure. Not long after, she decided not to push anymore, and within minutes, that patient was dead. Proximity changed, transformed this woman's mind and conception about life. But proximity that night, that evening, also changed me. Because you see, I've been bothering my chaplains, the second shift chaplains. Get off on time, finish at 10 o'clock. You can do it. Trust the next person that is coming right after you. And that night, I was just getting home at 1:30 in the morning. Proximity changes you. The distance leader may become an irrelevant leader if he doesn't want to get close to his people. Now let's talk about the third aspect of servant leadership. Empowerment. I consider empowerment the insanity of leadership. You see, and the best example for this is Jesus. When Jesus was talking to his disciples in John chapter 12, verse 14, he says to them, truly I tell you, whoever believes in me, the works that I've been doing, they will do. And even greater works. And I'm saying to myself, what? One thing is to think that you're doing something great. The other is to think that your people can do it better than you. This is the insanity. It takes a lot of maturity. It takes a lot of self-awareness to think and to believe that your people will do it better than you. And it'll happen. They will do it better than us. The positional leader seeks control. The servant leader seeks to unleash the talent of his people or her people. The servant leader does not seek to have power over, but to have power with. I'm hoping that you can be a strong leader and one that allows his people, her people, to thrive in a changing world. Thank you.
An impactful chaplain is a life learner who enhances their understanding of the ever-changing world around them. After completing my MDiv, I believe I was ready to take on the world. I packed my belongings in my small car with my diplomas and books, and I headed to my first assigned church. I was going to bring all that knowledge that I had acquired to the small church and show them the correct way of doing ministry. The first event I was to participate in was the church board. I walked in with my blue blazer and my power red tie. I took my seat beside the head pastor and the meeting began. For the next 2.5 hours, all my self-assurance based on what I had learned in my formal education was smothered by what I didn't know. I was lost in the budget talks, in the discussions over building and safety codes, diplomacy, and understanding the community and culture of where I was going to serve. By the end of the meeting, my tie was undone and my confidence was deflated. As I headed to my car and slumped in my seat, I was in a daze and unsure if I can do this. There was a knock on my car window that brought me back. There standing was an elderly man by the name of Bud. He was one of the church elders. I rolled down my window and Bud reached in and patted my arm and said, "Welcome to the real world, Pastor." I gave him a half-hearted smile and said, "Wow, I got a lot to learn." "Good to hear it," said Bud. "Meet me here for breakfast tomorrow at 7 a.m. And he walked away. The next morning I sat with Bud at a small cafe and I began my journey as a lifelong learner. From the moment we take a breath in this life, we begin to learn. We learn that if we cry, we will be held, fed, or changed. For the first 22 years or so of our lives, our main job is learning. The bulk of our time is spent in classrooms acquiring new knowledge. And then once we graduate, we feel like the education of a phase of our lives is done. And now it's time to go out into the world. Have you ever thought how odd that is? That only a quarter of our lives should be devoted to learning, and that we should simply rest on our laurels for the remaining 3/4 of it. I say there's more for each of us to learn, and learning should take place our whole lives and in the whole world. Being a lifelong learner will enhance our understanding of the world around us, provide us with richer ministry opportunities, and improve our quality of care of others. As mentioned, most people associate learning with formal education at school, college, and university. We're all told from an early age that we should get a good education. And generally speaking, it is true that a formal education and the resulting qualifications are important. As chaplain, formal education provides the foundation for developing knowledge, skills, and wisdom as a professional and effective spiritual care provider. However, schooling is only one type of learning. There are other concepts to further your knowledge and develop the living skills you need throughout your ministry and life. To be an impactful chaplain who is a life learner, we must be open to seek and learn about, learn from, and learn with. To learn about is a concept of gathering information that helps us check and better adjust our blind spots and assumptions against reality. This is a starting point. Through books and classes and internet, we are collecting facts about the culture of the people, places, and history of where you will serve and live. When I first started my career in chaplaincy, I was assigned to NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. I took the time to research what NICU was, who it served, and what unique services were needed by a chaplain serving in that unit. Learning about helps us check and better adjust our expectation against reality. Learning about should generate questions that will help you probe more deeply into that culture. Learning about gives you initial orientation. It is a great place to start, but not a great place to stop. The danger of only learning about is that if our learning stops there, it is insufficient for our effectiveness. We can learn about without building one single relationship. Therefore, we must pursue more productive kinds of learning that are relationship-based. Learning from. Learning from is a concept of authentically dialoguing with others as a means of entering into interpersonal relationships and awareness to become aware of how people see, feel, know, and experience. For several reasons, learning from others is considerably more powerful than learning about others. For almost 2 years, Bud and I met for breakfast once a week, and I learned the history of the church, their families that made up that church, their struggles and their success and their goals. Bud taught me how to become an effective leader in that congregation by listening and being with them. And since then, over the next 20 plus years, I was blessed to have other individuals who walked with me in different roles and assignments that I went to. I had Floyd, Winston, Sandra, Larry, and Theo. These individuals blessed me with their wisdom and time. Being an effective life learner challenges us to ask questions, seek understanding, and probe thoughts. Learning from others honors them and invites them to speak openly and honestly with us and establish interpersonal awareness. We were not created to be life learners alone. In fact, I would say you are not truly a life learner if you walk alone. Being a life learner with others deepens your learning and enriches your person and care. Serving in a hospital, we are surrounded by many who have rich insights and wisdom that we can learn from. Insights that will empower your ministry, relationship, and credibility among those you serve. Learning about, learning from are powerful components of being a life learner. Now it's time to go even deeper to what I consider the best and most wonderful part of learning, and that is learning with, in partnership and mutuality. Learning with is a concept of sharpening our vision and practicing by engaging and connecting in relationships. In Proverbs 27:17, it describes this type of learning as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Respectful interaction between two people benefits both. Each depend on each other. Both are teacher and learner, without each person knowing or caring that those roles are being played out. This learning is crucial to a life learner. Forming those relationships that journey with us for long periods of time, forming and challenging us to make us better people and care providers. To be an impactful chaplain, we must commit ourselves to be life learners through the learning about, learning from, and learning with. Being a life learner sharpens our vision and practices in a way that will go beyond our formal education and form us into the chaplain God has created you for.
We live in a society that glorifies individuality and at times even isolation. The most important fact is that humanity was created to live in community. We need each other to survive. Take, for instance, a newborn baby. As newborns, we live to be cuddled and caressed by our mothers. We crave touch. We crave any kind of human touch. That is why there is a high probability that a crying baby will stop once we pick him up and cuddle them in our arms. The sad part of all that is that we grow, and as we grow, we begin to feel a need for individuality. Or should I say, we experience an illusion that we are strong enough to stand on our own, that we do not need the help of our parents or our caregivers, although we still need them, especially our parents. I remember feeling like I wanted to grow. I wanted to turn 18 so my father wouldn't have to take me to school and drive me everywhere. Oh, I dreamt of the time I would drive myself anywhere in that beautiful green Jeep Wagoneer. Yet, the reality was that even as a licensed teenager or as a licensed bearing adolescent, I could not drive without the presence of an adult in the car. So I still needed someone to go everywhere. As a 51 years old man, I have realized that I need others to survive. And that need will be more evident as years go by. There will come a time, if Jesus doesn't return before, that I will need others to fulfill the most basic functions of life, including those that I don't even think about right now, like feeding myself or even going to the bathroom. We must also take into consideration that COVID-19 has demonstrated this very clear. We need each other to survive. Notice how the experience of COVID-19 has affected humanity, especially those with the special need of human connection. A study published by Medical Express, a European organization, used the report of Tidal, an Irish longitudinal study on aging prior to the pandemic, to compare with data gathered after the social distancing of the pandemic. And the results were astonishing. Before the pandemic, 70% of Tidal participants reported that they were never or rarely felt alone. I repeat that. 70% of Tidal participants reported that they never or rarely felt alone. 20% reported that they felt lonely sometimes. And 5% reported that they felt lonely often. Research previous to the pandemic pointed out that most older adults are not often lonely and appear quite resilient, while data gathered by a lone hotline in Ireland after the pandemic shows some interesting trends. The Alone hotline, taking into consideration the information from Tidal, reviewed something interesting. The first thing that we find is that The Alone hotline received, catch this, 26,174 calls between March 9th and July 5th of 2020. 26,174. Of those 26,000 calls, 55% were people 70 or older. About 14,000 people called during that time that were older than 70 years old. Alone documented a significant increase in calls reporting negative emotions, including suicidal ideations. The majority of the calls requested support for physical health and a need to befriend someone. Although data seems to indicate that COVID makes no exception regarding age, especially in the last few days, we know that the most vulnerable population to COVID-19 is the elderly, which has led to all kinds of conspiracy theories, but I'm not going to go into those conspiracy theories. We have all seen the sad stories of those who have died alone. And as chaplains, we deal with the frustration of caregivers who want to provide a compassionate presence in end of life, but such presence has been limited due to the dangers of contracting the virus. The problem here is that we tend to equate the concept of autonomy to an illusion of freedom. If we go back to the start of it all, we find in the Garden of Eden a story that is very interesting and a lesson on the matter of presence and relationship. The biblical account reports that God created Adam in his image. The famous theological concept of imago Dei implicates that in the act of creation, God wanted to produce creatures with whom he could and would relate. During the sixth day of creation, God formed Adam out of the dust of the earth and gave him the job of caring for the garden. Among his responsibilities, Adam was to name all the animals. The biblical account also tells us that God brought all the animals to Adam according to their species, and Adam, by giving them name, was to seek an able helper among them. The story indicates that even after completing the task, Adam was unable to find an able helper. Thus, God, by performing the first open heart surgery, brought Eve to Adam, and his reaction explains a few guiding principles on the matter of presence. Number one, regardless of how helpful animals may be in supporting humanity, and history has shown us that every era of human history has been covered with help from animals. From the very beginning, only the presence of a same species creation responded to Adam's need. This is not to say that animals are not good companions. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that they are not the intended able helper that humanity calls for. I think at this time we also need to explore the original languages. Here, the Hebrew terms are neged and ezer. These two terms are used together only in this portion of the Bible, and they literally can be translated against help, giving the idea of a counterpart of some source of the same species standing in front of each other, or at the very least next to each other, with unity of purpose. The original language concept is one that provides the space for a tension of wanting to live in autonomy while needing the support of someone, who counters our desires for loneliness with their presence. Ultimately, God's act of creation in the case of humanity includes something different than with the rest of creation. The Bible plainly states, "So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God He created them. Male and female He created them." Genesis 1:27 from the New Living Translation. Unlike the rest of creation, God created humanity in His image, and such image is best realized when we are not alone. When we hold the tension of knowing that we want to be alone, but recognizing that we need to be supported, cared for. We need to experience the compassionate presence of another. Perhaps we need to explore more forms of presence in the area of social distancing. What do you think?
He has showed you, O chaplain, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Now, I don't know where Micah got his training in ethics. I don't know if he had an advanced degree. I kind of suspect he probably didn't, but certainly this text helps us to understand that Micah clearly understood ethics. The four cardinal principles of ethics, as we understand them today, are the words that come directly out of Micah's message: justice, beneficence, autonomy, and non-malfeasance. Now, that's a long word. It just simply means not doing harm. Not doing harm. Justice means, as Micah said, to act justly, to be equitable, to be impartial. Beneficence, that word bene is a blessing. Benefit, we understand. Beneficent, we understand. Benediction is to speak a blessing. Benediction. So autonomy, that is one's personhood and respect for others, goes together in some respects with non-malfeasance, which fits with to walk humbly with your God. True humility, Martin Luther said, does not even know that it's humble. If humility only knew itself, it would be proud to possess such a fine virtue, he said. And so would the frog. Once upon a time, there was a frog who lived in the north. And each winter, the swans in his neighborhood would fly south where it was warm, while the frog was stuck in the north. So he approached his swan friends and he said, "You know, I would love to go south with you guys this year." But the swan said, "Frog, you can't fly. Get over it." He said, "Oh, but I have this wonderful idea. If I find a stick, two of you could hold that stick in your beaks, and I could hang on to the middle of that stick, and you could take me south for the winter with you." Well, they decided to give it a try. So they got the stick, the frog got onto the stick, the geese put it in their beaks, and they flew south, south and south. Finally coming down over the state of North Carolina and flying low over those farm fields. And it happened that a farmer looked up and said, "Look at that. I've never seen anything like that before. Whoever came up with that idea must be really smart." Well, the frog heard that, and being incredibly proud of what he had accomplished, he let go of the stick and fell to the ground. Once upon a time, there was a frog. Jim Barry, in his book, The Little Minister, says, life is a long lesson in humility. Life is a long lesson in humility. My dad and mom would have understand that. My dad died in 2003. My mom died 1 year later in 2004. Dad's death was quick and unexpected. We knew he had heart disease. He was on medication for it. He was doing well. He went to bed one night, went to sleep, and never woke up the next morning. So I tell people that my dad doesn't know he's dead. He thinks he's just sleeping, and maybe he is. Mom's death was different. Her decline had actually started about 6 or 7 years earlier, descending into the abyss of the dementia of Alzheimer's disease. So by the time that Dad died, Mom's Alzheimer's was really pretty bad. As we were working around the house preparing for Dad's memorial service, there was a photo of him, and she looked over my shoulder and she said, "Is he dead?" Well, it took me a moment, but I looked at Mom and I said, "Yes, he is, Mom." She said, oh well. And that was what my mom understood of my dad's dying. When it came time for his service, she didn't understand really what was going on, and she refused to dress up for it, so she came to the funeral in a house dress and without her hair done as we would have liked, but she was there. And my dad had served in the military, in the Navy, and so they had a flag draped over his casket, which then they folded in a little ceremony and brought it to my mom and placed it on her lap, thanking her for my dad's service. She held that and looked at it and then turned to her sister sitting next to her and said, "You want this?" Mom didn't understand. It was a time of humiliation had she understood. Humility is unconsciousness of oneself, unawareness of personal prerogative, insensitive to personal slight. And if there's anything at all good about Alzheimer's, it is that one is all of those things, not aware of oneself, not sensitive to a slight. So after the memorial service, their 3 children began breaking down the house. Obviously, Mom could not live there alone, so we settled the estate, we divided the goods, we sold the house, and gathering whatever things our mom would need with her, we drove north to the place where I lived in Tennessee, several hundred miles away. And she entered a long-term care facility, a wonderful place, really very nice. And she settled in nicely, but it was not her home, and it was not her back porch, and it was not her flowers, and there was a lot of unfamiliarity. But I'm kind of convinced that she thought it was the academy dormitory, which was one of the happiest years of her life, and she sort of settled in as though that's what it was. Living simply. To be humble is to live simply, to listen carefully and speak slowly, to walk softly and spend sparingly, to share generously, love easily, forgive graciously, and in fact, in the depths of her Alzheimer's, that's the way my mother lived. She walked every day, all day, back and forth, up and down the halls, going here and there, and often walking with someone and holding their hand. And she didn't know who they were. Sometimes she thought that the person she was holding hands with was her mom, and sometimes she thought it was her sister, and sometimes she thought it was a friend from academy days. And they walked together. Whenever one of us would show up, when I would go to see her, Mom would get a huge smile on her face and throw her arms up and say, "Oh, you're here." And that lasted about 15 seconds, and then she was walking again, having forgotten who it was that was there to see her. That's humility. Mother was learning to walk with her God. To walk with her God. The God who is the unseen watcher, the never sleeping presence, the all-knowing wisdom, the ingenious creator, the ultimate knower, in the awareness of whom worshipful humility is the only real response, the only viable response, the only response that matters. And at the end of the day, the ethic of humility is more about being than it is about doing. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 2 and 3 really emphasizes that when it says, "Be ye humble, be ye gentle, be ye patient with each other, bearing one another up in the unity of love through the bond of peace." I thought you might be interested in hearing those words in a little chorus, and I hope it will help ingrain those words in your mind. Be ye humble, be ye gentle.
Be humble, be gentle, be patient with each other, bearing one another up in the unity of love through the bond of peace. Be humble, be gentle, be patient with each other, bearing one another up in the unity of love through the bond of peace. Bearing one another up in the unity of love through the bond of peace. Be
Board certification is the process by which candidates demonstrate their competence, qualifications, and ability to function as a professional chaplain. One purpose of board certification is to assure the public and the employing organization that the chaplain has met established national and ecclesiastic standards for professional competency, has been endorsed by the church, and has been authorized as a minister of the church and a representative of the church, and is held to a code of ethics. A second purpose is to promote the continuing education and development of certified spiritual care providers. Dr. Ivan Omaña will make this presentation. He is the chair of the Board of Certification. So let's pay close attention to what he has to say, and he will guide us through this very important process of our church affirmation and certification of our pastors and chaplains.
I am happy to be with you today, and at this moment I am taking the responsibility of guiding you through a process that is sometimes a bit cumbersome, sometimes a bit traumatic. But I guarantee you, there's one thing that has guided me throughout my life is knowing that absolutely every time God is with me. Bible says that God will never leave me nor forsake me for anything in the world. And the process of board certification is no exception. So I want you to first and foremost understand that God will be with you even as He is with you right now in all this process. Yes, I have to share with you a lot of information, and I only have 15 minutes to share with you that information. So if we're ready to go, I'd like to have a short prayer. Father, please help us. Amen. So let's talk about board certification. What is board certification? Board certification is the process by which, and I'm reading right here exactly as it reads in our website, is the process by which candidates demonstrate their competence, qualifications, and ability to function as professional chaplains. There are three principles here, three important portions of this process. Number one, competence. Number two, qualifications. And number three, ability. And there are three ways we measure this in this process. And I'm going to take the time to teach you how to demonstrate each one of those areas. Because you see, contrary to what you may have experienced with other organizations, Adventist Chaplaincy Institute is here to help you and to recognize your ministry. I want you to know this from the get-go. I know, and we know at Adventist Chaplaincy Institute, that you have been called by God to do the job that you do. I also know that you do it well, otherwise you wouldn't be employed. All right? But having said that, you need to be able to demonstrate some basic knowledge, some basic competence, some basic functioning. And we will be taking the time to demonstrate that, because that is what makes you a board certified chaplain. So, having established the basis upon which we will be working, let's begin the journey of board certification. Are you with me? Continuing with me? I hope so. The first step in this process for you is to go to your computer. Let me stand corrected. You're already sitting in front of your computer. But the first step is, in your computer, you need to go to this website, www.adventistchaplaincyinstitute.org. Again, www.adventistchaplaincyinstitute, one word, .org. In the top right corner, you will see a link that says Log In. Click on Log In, and it will open a new page. In the bottom of the square that you see right there in the middle of your screen, there are two buttons. One for those who have already opened a profile in the Adventist Chaplaincy Institute website. Then you will log in. But for those who have never opened a profile, you need to create a new account. Without that new account, we cannot proceed. Let me make sure you understand. You need to be able to navigate the website. You need to be able to navigate the database. That is very important. And you have to carefully read every portion that is in front of you. Every portion. There will be sometimes you will have some issues. You will have some problems because technology is not perfect. If you run into technological problems, there is actually in the website a way for you to communicate with our webmaster. And we will get back to you trying to resolve the matter as soon as possible. Give us at least 24 to 48 hours to get back with you. All right, so if you have created the profile, then we can move to the next phase. I'm going to stop here and give you a couple of minutes. Remember that I said a few minutes ago that board certification is the process by which candidates demonstrate their competence, their qualifications, and their ability to function or their function. We measure your functionality, we measure your ability to function while you are working within the website, the way that you are able to manage things. I want you to understand something. All the documentation for anyone to be board certified needs to be uploaded into the system. Do not email us that information. All that information needs to be uploaded into your portion of the database where you and those of us who have access to it, only the team for board certification, only you and us have access to that, and we will be gathering the information there, okay? It is uploaded into the website, and that's how we measure your capabilities to function. Now let's move into your qualifications. As an Adventist chaplain, if you want to be board certified, the first step is for you to be endorsed by your division. The Seventh-day Adventist General Conference policy book establishes that each division of the world is responsible for granting endorsement to their chaplains. Over here in the North American Division, we have done this for over 40 years now. But there are many who have not. The Inter-American Division started endorsing their chaplains about 2 or 3 years ago. And there are some other divisions of the world that are getting caught up in the process of endorsing their chaplains. So the first thing you need to do is you need to secure a letter of endorsement from your ACM director in your respective division. You also need to have a master's, preferably in theology, in a theological field. Now, if you want to be fully certified, it has to be a master with 72 semester hours or 108 quarter hours. Let me stand very clear here. Your master needs to be either 72 semester hours or 108 quarter hours. Don't be calling me and asking me for exceptions. If you want to be fully certified, that is the requirement. I repeat, a master, preferably in a theological field with 72 semester hours or 108 quarter hours. If you have, for instance, the Masters of Pastoral Theology, that's a 48 semester hours degree, you can complement that with a Doctor of Ministry, and then it will take you over the 72 semester hours. There will be some exceptions, but those are made by the ACI, Adventist Chaplaincy Institute Board, and they are irrevocably. In other words, if we decide not to grant you the exception, you do not have a course for appeals. All right? And I want you to understand that. So if you want to be fully board certified, 72 semester hours, 108 quarter hours. If you want to be associate certified, then a 48-hour semester works for that, 48 hours. So that's part of the qualifications. The first one is you need to be endorsed by your division. The second one is you need to have a master's degree in a theological field. If you want to be fully certified, you need to have 4 completed units of clinical pastoral education. I repeat, 4 completed units of clinical pastoral education for full certification. If you want to be associate certified, you need 2 units of clinical pastoral education. We have also added a third qualification, a third modality of certification is what we call provisional certification. And this is very important. We will only extend provisional certification to people who has not had 2,000 hours of chaplaincy ministry after the completion of their CPE. In other words, you completed 4 units of CPE, and before you can be board certified, you need 2,000 hours of supervised work as a chaplain. But we have built into the process the possibility that you can request board certification as a provisionally certified chaplain pending the completion of hours. There were other options for provisional certification, but we are exploring the possibility that we will not use them anymore. I hope everything is clear. So, you have a master's, or you have 72 semester hours for fully certified, or 48 hours for associate certified. You may request either associate or fully provisional pending the completion of the hours. You have 4 units of clinical pastoral education. Next step, showing that you are, what was the word here? What was the word that we use? That you are qualified. The next step is you must have either a ministerial credential or a ministerial license. You must have either a ministerial credential or a ministerial license. And I'm going to say this, please don't kill the messenger. I am just reporting. There are some divisions of the world where women do not receive neither a ministerial credential or a ministerial license, but they will receive a missionary license. In those cases, we are accepting the missionary license in order to grant them board certification. We're not going to fight this issue. We're just going to say that in those places where females do not receive ministerial credentials or ministerial license, they most likely will receive missionary license, and we are accepting those in the case of our chaplains. So you have a copy of your ministerial credentials or your license. And then, here's what you need to do. You need to get a letter of recommendation from your employer. And by the way, this letter of recommendation is not to be sent to the office at the General Conference. This letter of recommendation is to be scanned and uploaded into the database. The letter of recommendation from your employer, a letter of recommendation from your ACM director in your division, where they verify your endorsement, and this letter must be directed to Adventist Chaplaincy Institute office. You also need a letter of recommendation from a fellow chaplain. Going back to that website, in the beginning of the website, you will need to download from the main page the Code of Ethics for Chaplains. You need to download it, print it, sign it, scan it, and upload it. And notice how we have, through this process, united the capacity to function as a chaplain with the qualifications. You may ask, for example, so how do I demonstrate my degree, for instance? You need to request from the seminary where you studied, you need to request an official transcript. That official transcript needs to be sent to the ACM office directly. It cannot come from you. It has to come from the ACM office or directly to the ACM office from the registrar's office in the seminary where you were. So if you went to Andrews, you call Andrews and you have them send the copy of your transcripts to the Adventist Chaplains Institute office located in 12501 Old Columbia Pike in Silver Springs, Maryland, 20904. If you're in Africa, you call the Adventist University of Africa and you ask them to send a transcript to where 12501 Old Columbia Pike, Silver Springs, Maryland, 20904. If you're in the Philippines and you want to be board certified, you go to IS and you ask them to send copies of your transcript to where 12501 Old Columbia Pike, Silver Springs, Maryland, 20904. If you are in Mexico or anywhere in Inter-America, you go to CETAI, the seminary, the Theological Seminary of Inter-America, and you ask them to send the transcripts of your masters to where? 12501 Old Columbia Pike, Silver Springs, Maryland, 20904. I hope you're understanding. I'm trying to be as clear as I can be. So we have now, by now, demonstrated, number one, our ability to function in a way a professional chaplain can function. And number two, we have demonstrated our qualifications. This is very important. One of the purposes of board certification is to assure the public and the employing organizations that the chaplain has met established international standards for professional competence and is held to a code of ethics. Now we are moving into the competence. You see, because the fact that you are capable and the fact that you are qualified doesn't make you competent. You have to show the competence. So, how do you demonstrate your competence? The first way to demonstrate your competency is by writing your autobiography. I had some chaplains that connected with me the other day, and they were seeking some guidance into the board certification. And the first thing they did is they sent me their autobiography, and it was 2 pages long. No, that is unacceptable. We are looking for something that is more in the side of 7 to 10 pages long. If it's single space or double space, is up to you. But this is very important. As you sit down to write your autobiography, I want you to discuss your call to ministry. I want you to discuss your call to chaplaincy ministry. I want you to talk about, give me a description of your spiritual development. I want you to share with me important relationships and events in your life that inform your ministry practice. So this is what I will call a reflective autobiography. This is not just a story I tell. I was born here, the firstborn in a family of 3, etc., etc. No. I need you to tell me that you were firstborn in a family of 3, but how does that make you the chaplain that you are today? How does that make you the pastor that you are today? When you became a Seventh-day Adventist, because you were probably born in a Seventh-day Adventist family, but you did not become a Seventh-day Adventist by birth. You made a choice. I want you to tell me, how did that choice come about? What are the beliefs in the Seventh-day Adventist Church that make you the chaplain that you are today? How do you use that in your practice of ministry? How do you use your identity as a Seventh-day Adventist pastor to provide ministry to those that are in need? So I need you to take time to write, like I said, a reflective autobiography. It's not just something that comes, that you pull out of your hat. It's something that you need to sit down and chew on. Perhaps even call a few of your colleagues and share with them your autobiography. Talk to them about who you are as a chaplain or as a pastor. I need you to be reflective as you do that. I also need you to write a very comprehensive curriculum vitae. When I say very comprehensive, I'm not looking for a resume, 1 or 2 pages listing the things that you have done. No, I'm looking for you to write a list of your accomplishments, a list of the responsibilities that you have held, and a way that you have held those responsibilities. As an assistant director of chaplaincy ministries for the North American Division, I have been there since October of 2015 until the present. And I have done this, that, and the other. My responsibilities are this, that, and the other, and I carry my responsibilities this way. Before that, between 2000 and 2015, I was a chaplain at Advent Health, or what is now known as Advent Health, but it was then known as Florida Hospital. So I was a chaplain there, and I was a senior chaplain at Florida Hospital Kissimmee. I'm giving you the example of my own CV, my own curriculum vitae. I did this education. I have a master's of divinity from Florida Center for Theological Studies. I've completed my Doctor of Ministry at Denver Seminary. I went to college at Columbia Union College, now known as Washington Adventist University, etc., etc., etc. I have taken these special courses. I have taken these special certification. I completed CPE. I am a board certified chaplain. I am a board certified pastoral counselor, etc., etc., etc. I need you to take the time to put in there everything that makes you who you are right now. So you have an autobiography and you have a CV. Then we come into the most important part of this whole thing. When you go to that website, where in the same place where you found the Code of Ethics, the Code of Ethics is the third document that you find in that website, in that page. In the middle, you have a document that includes the 31 competencies of chaplaincy. 31, 3-1. There are 31 competencies of chaplaincy that are divided into 4 sections. The first section is pastoral care theology. The second section is pastoral identity and conduct. The third section is professional pastoral care. And the fourth section is professional pastoral leadership. You're going to take each one of those competencies, and out of the 31, you write about 29. 30 and 31 are competencies that you demonstrate, and I'm going to go into that in a few minutes. But I need you to be sure that you deal with each one of those competencies. So you will write one essay per section of the competencies. So you will write one essay entitled Pastoral Care Theology, and you will take each of the competencies one by one, and you will share in writing how do you live out that competency? How do you demonstrate that competency? So you will end up writing 4 essays. Each one of those competencies needs to be covered. We will not accept any paper, we will not accept any package for certification unless you have completed all the competencies. You have to write about each one of the competencies. All right? Last, but certainly not least, you have to write 2 clinical cases. I'm talking with people that has already taken CPE, so you know what I'm talking about. You're going to have to write 2 verbatims. But these are very different verbatims than the one you wrote when you were taking CPE or clinical pastoral education. These are verbatims in which you show us your best work. These are verbatims where you tell us the best things that you have done. Now, these cannot be just any verbatims. They cannot be older than 5 years. And also, I would like to tell you something that helped me when I was in this process. When I wrote the verbatims for my board certification, I quoted within the verbatim the places where I demonstrated the competency. For example, competency TCP-01, the chaplain introduces himself. This is an example. That's not what the competency says. I'm just giving you an example. So, competency TCP-01 is the chaplain introduces himself. So when I introduce myself in the verbatim, I parenthetically said TCP-01. I showed my readers where in the verbatim I believed I was showing the competencies. I need you to understand something here. There is no such a thing as a perfect clinical case. So there will always be someone in your committee, there will be someone in your board certification board that will take issue into what you say or how you do things, the things you do. As the chair of the certification board, I am not worried if you demonstrate something the negative way. In other words, if you demonstrate competency by doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to use that against you. But if you deny the reality that you demonstrated the competency in the wrong way and you stick to your guns saying, I don't care, I demonstrated this here, you may not be aware of yourself as much as you need to be. So there may be a moment in which you may say, I realize the ITP-01, I didn't show it here. But this should be the place where I should have shown it. See what I'm trying to say? When you are open and honest, and you demonstrate to the committee or to the board, as we call it, that you are aware of your learning curves, that you are aware of your learning opportunities, we will not hold that against you. Are you with me? I need you to be with me here. And I'm going to take another break, and we will go into the last part of this certification board process. So you have already demonstrated your qualifications. You have already demonstrated your ability by uploading everything. Make sure at the end of this whole process that you click on that little thing, that little button that says submit. I've had a lot of people angry at me. I uploaded a bunch of documents, but you have not called me to set up the time for the certification. And when I go and look, I find out that they have not clicked on that submit button. So technically speaking, I don't have to do anything because there is no application submitted. So make sure you submit your application. Once you submit your application, the system is arranged that it will send an email. It would send me a notification. It will actually send me and Dina Bartel Wagner will send us a notification. When we get that notification, either one of us goes into the system and we approve your application. You have written all your paperwork. You have signed everything that you need to sign. Now the time is for us to do two things. And this is what I will do. My first thing will be to appoint what we call a presenter. The presenter is a board-certified chaplain who will read all your paperwork and will complete a form that is called the presenter's report. It is kind of like the way the person, that chosen person, introduces you to the rest of the board. We will put together a board that is formed by 3 or 4 board-certified chaplains. 3 or 4 board-certified chaplains. And then we also, as a matter of courtesy, invite into the board with voice, not with vote, the director of ACM of your division, and we are, as of late, inviting someone from the ministerial department. And there's a reason for that. Let me share it with you. This is my own thing. I am claiming full authority and full responsibility for this decision. I am tired of people thinking that because I'm a chaplain, I'm somehow less of a pastor. So what I am doing is I am inviting ministerial directors from conferences, from unions, from divisions to sit in one of those certification boards. And the process of changing their view is visible because you see, no other pastor after their ordination has to write all this paperwork. And then after they write all this paperwork, they have to sit with a board. And not only that, they sit with the board and they have to respond to questions with the board. And that is exactly what will happen. I need you to understand something. This is very important. After you have done all this work, perhaps there are ways in which you wrote something in that paperwork, in your essays, that made it not so clear for the committee to understand the way you delivered on that competency. So, the presenter's report will give you guidance as you come before the committee, as you come before the board, will give you guidance as to where are the areas where you probably wrote something good, but you need to clarify with the team. There will always be opportunities. So once your presenter's report is completed, they will send it to you, and once you approve it, then we gather together with the board. The board will meet for 2 hours. The first half an hour, we talk about your paperwork, and we share the questions that we may have about your paperwork. There may be no questions. There may be some questions. It's okay. We will have some of that. For 30 minutes we meet, and then after those 30 minutes we bring you into the room, whether we are in a physical room or whether we are in a virtual room. It doesn't matter. We bring you into the room, and then you will have 1 hour to share with the committee. We, the board, will ask you questions where we need clarifications. We will ask you questions where we need to understand a little bit better the way you deliver on the competencies of professional chaplaincy. After that, we will ask you to either leave the room, or you also have the choice of staying in the room, but you cannot talk. You only have the opportunity to stay in the room if you want to listen, but you cannot talk. And then while we are in that last half hour, we have a report that goes competency by competency. And there is a table next to it, next to each one of the competencies, where we say there are three choices. The candidate demonstrated the competency orally, in writing, or did not demonstrate the competency. If you did not demonstrate the competency, then we will ask you to reappear in the committee, making sure that you understand that competency. If you demonstrated the competency orally or in writing, you passed. At the end, we just sign the paperwork and then we declare you board certified. But it's not over yet, because we have to present your name to the ACM committee in the General Conference. The ACM committee in the General Conference meets every 3 months. So we have to get all the candidates together, and within the agenda for the ACM committee, we always have a space to vote and make permanent the certification of each one of our candidates. Once you complete your certification and once you are certified, you will receive a certificate. You will also receive a button. You will also have the choice to either get a jacket just like this one, but you have to pay for it, or you can order another jacket. Lastly, I want you to understand something. Unlike other committees where I have sat, we specifically decided that we wanted to keep this committee, this board, as one that is collegial, one that is gathering not with the intention of gotcha. No, we are gathering together with the intention of recognizing your ministry. And I'm going to close with this. I began by saying, you have been called to the ministry of chaplaincy. You have been called to deliver chaplaincy. You have been doing that. I know that because most of you are employed and you have not been fired. So you do that well. What you need to know is that when you come to board certification, you are demonstrating competence, you are demonstrating your qualifications, and you're demonstrating your ability to function as a professional chaplain. So what you're doing is just simply showing something you already do. Interesting. This is just about you demonstrating what you already are doing. And all we are doing as a committee or as a board is to recognize, see that, and bear witness that you have all it takes to be a board certified chaplain. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. The email will be provided. Please do not hesitate to share with me your questions. God bless you.
We've come to the end of day one and pray you've been blessed by today's presentations from the 3rd Adventist Chaplains World Congress. You can check tomorrow's schedule on the ACM website at adventistchaplains.org. Click on the link for the World Congress. Don't forget to fill out the CEU form to record the programming that you watched today. The link for the form is on the World Congress website page.